Alrighty, thank you guys so much today for coming to another one of our Spotlight on the Standard 7th grade social studies seminars for the month of June and July. We're excited to have you all here. With that, you guys are lucky to learn from 3 master teachers. I will let them introduce themselves here in just a minute, but as a point of attendance, if when they do introductions, I think they're going to have you guys introduce yourself, but then at the end of the session, I will come back on and I will need you to type in your first and last names as you registered in our system. And you need to be present for just about the whole session to get your hours of PD for today. But other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen, Holly, and Nicole to introduce themselves. And thank you again for coming.
Real quick, as I put the Nearpod code in the chat, and much like we did with our 6th grade, we're going to be using Nearpod in our presentation. So you can just follow along in the Nearpod, and we'll pull you back to the big group when we need you to come back. So I'm going to go on to our first slide, and I'm going to start with the introduction. I'm Stephen Williamson. I'm the K-12 social studies instructional coach at Scottsdale Unified. I taught middle school for 22 years, and this will be going into my 5th year as in the coaching role. Holly?
Hi, everybody. My name is Holly Johnston. I am the K-12 curriculum specialist for Scottsdale Unified School District in the West Valley. I've taught there my whole career. I've been doing this job for the past, this is my 3rd year doing this particular job. And like Stephen, I support K-12, so I support high school and elementary, but I was a high school government economics teacher prior to this job. So welcome, we're excited to share and hang out with you guys today. So Nicole.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nicole Scales. I'm the instructional coach for Madison School District. I've been an instructional coach for a long time, and I'd rather not say. Okay, so we're just gonna continue with that. Welcome. You're gonna enjoy this training. It's gonna be awesome. Or professional development, I like to say. It's gonna be awesome.
Okay, so we're going to take a look who is in the room. So what I'm going to have you do in our next slide, you're going to put your name, your school that you're from, and something you're looking forward to learning about today. So name, school, and something you're looking forward to learning about today. Just in case you are not in the Nearpod, here is the link one more time. So put your name, what school you're from, and something you're looking forward to learning about. Okay, so someone from Carrie from Legacy. We have Sean from Gilbert Arts Academy. Red Rock. Granado Middle School. Okay. Let's pull down, see what else we got. Make sure you put in there something you're looking forward to learning about today. Primavera Online, there we go.
One person said they're looking forward to learning how to use Inquiry.
Oh, there we go. Madison Park, there we go. Legacy.
All right, Madison.
Tucson, there we go. Primavera.
Another person's looking
Murata, okay.
Another person's looking forward to covering all the state standards.
Oh, there we go. Okay, and the Nearpod code, if you join, Paula just joined, why don't you jump on to that Nearpod code, and we're putting in our name, our school, and something we're looking forward to learning about today.
You already know me, so do I have to do that?
Yeah, but everyone else doesn't.
But you do.
That's true. Okay, just give everyone about 30 more seconds. Central College Prep. Wow, we got people from all over.
Yeah, it's great to
Yeah.
Apache
Apache
Junction.
Junction.
Wow.
Yep.
the amount of reach that you guys are getting, or we're getting.
That's awesome.
To support, you know, this.
All those emails that I sent to the different school districts throughout. Okay, so we're going to go on to our next slide. And here's our learning target. I'll let you guys read our learning target for today. Give a little time, and then I'm going to read the success criteria for you.
So a lot of you guys were asking for these things, and this is our intended outcome for you.
Yeah.
Nice. That's nice.
Okay, so our success.
Oh, Stephen, you are mute. Your sound is off.
Oh, let me try that again. Okay, so demonstrate a better understanding of the standards and strategies to teach the standards, collaborate with other educators, feel confident to implement these standards with my students. And here's our agenda today. Why don't you take about a minute to take a look at that. And at that point, the next slide, I'm going to send it over to Holly.
And Linda, if you wouldn't mind making me host so I can get the breakout room going.
There you go. You should be all set now. There we go. Now I think you're good.
I didn't see it. Oh, there we go. All right, so we are going to give you an opportunity in the spirit of inquiry to just start our day digging into the new standards a little bit. So we're going to use a strategy called Notice and Wonder. And so if Stephen will go to the next one.
Yep. So here's a little bit about the strategy. You know, you can use this. You start with a visual. And the first thing you would have students do is what do you notice? And give them a little time to write that down. And then review that. And then you would put down what you wonder about. So what questions do you have? And then you would go over that. For this, for today, we're just going to have you do both the notice and wonder together in groups. So everyone should be able to go and open up the document with the standards on it. So let everyone open that up, and so they have that on their computer.
And you'll notice we've provided you the one pager. The actual standards document has more things for you to dig into in it, including the inquiry elements and some of the other things we're going to talk about today. So that other document's definitely really valuable for you to go back and take a look at, that has multiple grade levels in it. But for our purpose today, we felt like this is the best for your inquiry right now.
Okay, so I'm going to go right to, now go through the breakout rooms.
All right, so what you guys are going to do is we're going to put you in breakout rooms of 4 to 5 people, and you are going to review the standards collaboratively. So take a look at the one pager that you were looking at, and you're just gonna, as you go, like Stephen mentioned, you're gonna jot down things you notice about the standards and then things you wonder. And your wonders are like questions or thoughts. They're not necessarily coming directly from the standards. And you have a Google slide presentation. So if you want to show that really fast.
Yep. So let me go on to that.
Where you're going to record your team's notices and wonders. So you might want to have one person from your group be your scribe. And as you're going through the standards, just record down the thoughts that you guys are sharing with each other. And then you'll utilize the one slide for whichever room you're in. So when you get to your room, if you're in room 4, you'll find the slide for your room and you will start recording your information on there. And we're gonna give you about 8 minutes to do that. Does anybody have any questions before we send you to your breakout rooms? No? All right, so I'm going to open up the rooms and I will let you know when you have 1 minute left. All right, so we wanted to get your expertise and ideas from your breakout room. And we would love it if on the next collaborative board, if you would share some main things that your group noticed and wondered about the standards. So just go ahead in the collaborative board, add some of your thoughts. What are your main things that you noticed and wondered, or main ahas, main questions, things that you talked about in your group? Go ahead and share some of those thoughts.
Okay, overlapping. Yep, so the POs are gone, thankfully. Yep, very ELA based, a lot of connection between the ELA standards. There's actually a crosswalk, let me get that.
It's funny though, I feel like when I looked at the crosswalk originally, I was like, every standard connects to the ELA. Like,
yeah, it does.
There's so many. So it was a little overwhelming for me at first. Look at it. You just have to take it and see which standards fit best with what you're trying to teach in the moment. Yeah, high level Bloom terms. That's one thing that is really great to point out, because with our old POs, it was very low level DOK 1. And now our students have to be thinking critically and analyzing and arguing and all of these higher level Bloom words, which are DOK 2, 3. It can be 4 depending, but 4 is really hard to reach. So
and I put the crosswalk in there for the ELA and ELP crosswalk, those of you that also, and it's probably a lot of us teaching English language learners as well.
Skills, yeah, focusing on skills. That's another thing that we want to chat.
Did you say no more than memorization? I love that. That's a great one. Oh, awesome, Elaine. Got my DBQ in there. She knows how much I love DBQ.
Yeah. Yeah, some of our concepts got moved. So we'll talk a little bit in a minute about how 6th, 7th, and 8th grade connect.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been a shift in some of the content. That's been a really hard thing for the teachers that I work with in my district, my 7th grade teachers specifically, is they're used to doing some world history, but a lot of American history from before. And that shift has been difficult for a lot of them because they like to teach certain things. So
I think 7th grade was easier because a lot of that stuff, you know, when I taught 7th grade, you know, you taught World War I, you taught, you know, the Depression. You just have to expand on it. It's more than the US. It's more of a, you know, global view.
Yeah, I tell my teachers, if you could just do like 70-30.
Yeah, there we go. Well, the US is part of the world.
Totally.
So,
yeah.
Okay, so why don't we go on to, there's some good ideas there.
Yeah. And you guys hit on a lot of the things that I was going to chat with you about. So this is a great check for understanding for me to see if you guys kind of connected to what we wanted you to connect with. And a lot of the stuff you said in your connections and your conversations you had are very similar to what I was going to share. So I'm going to just kind of breeze through this really quickly, just kind of share some insights as to some main things that we wanted you to get out of this exploration, and then we'll get right into some of the strategies and things like that. So I love this quote from Sam Weinberg, and this book is really good if you haven't looked into his book, but Why Learn History When It's Already on Your Phone. That idea that we shouldn't be asking students questions and having them engage with things that are Googleable. We should be having them dig into the Googleable stuff and then ask those bigger questions, like why? Why did this happen? Why does this matter? What does this mean to me now as a 7th grade student and sitting in my teacher's classroom? What does this mean to me as a citizen of the United States? So those are the questions that we want them to be grappling with, not what year was the French Revolution. Those types of questions are things they can Google. And it's a good tool for them to learn how to Google too. But it's not to give the kids the answers. It's about giving the kids those problems to solve and then the tools that they need to solve them. So that's what our new standards encompass. All right, next slide. All right, so here is like kind of the general overview of the 7th grade course. And you guys mentioned there are no POs, but the content still exists in your standards, but it exists through the storyline. So before you would have seen like actual content specific things in your standards. Now it's more broad, but your storyline still dictates to you what you should be teaching. So 7th grade is global studies, like I said, integrated with US history. So I tried to tell my teachers like 70-30, but it's from the 1600s to the present. So it's really extremely relevant to our students. You still get the revolutions in there that kids really like to learn about. You get all of the world wars that they really like to learn about. So 7th grade is a really fun grade to teach. But I think what is really important too is trying to get all the way to the present and supporting our students and really understanding like, how do world events affect us now? Like we are engaging in world events all the time. President Biden meeting with Putin. I mean, that is something that's super relevant. And so we need to make sure we try and get all the way to that present piece and manage our time a little bit.
Yep. I know Paula, one of my teachers, linked back the idea of using those current events to link back and make that bridge the gap between the past and present.
Yeah, the Cold War. I mean, how much could you talk about with Biden meeting Putin this last week and the Cold War? You could connect that really easily. So. And then you have all of your disciplinary areas that you're supposed to cover within your course. So no longer do we just do geography in a silo and history in a silo and economics in a silo. We do, we integrate all of those together. Paula, you raised your hand. You have something to share?
Oh, so when we sit there and we say that we're teaching them 1600 to present, I had this problem this year. We have to be careful with that because the question the kids come up with is, why is the Civil War missing? Because we're going from
right
A to H, and Steve, you were in my class when we had this big discussion. And so I tried to teach the kids a lot of this, but then when you teach like me, I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then you get to 8th grade with the civil rights, you're missing those amendments that came out of the Civil War. And so I feel like instead of teaching them more social studies, we teach them chronological order, A happens then B. I feel like we're all over. For instance, like we teach them World War II, Holocaust is in 8th grade. Armenian genocide is in 8th grade, but World War I is in 7th grade. So I feel like we could have mixed it more and made it chronological because it's very confusing for me. I see my kids in 7th and 8th, so I can bridge it. But for somebody else who doesn't, and you have kids, it's very confusing. But we're making cross connections with the new standards is easy. The only thing I hope is how ELA is now going to support social studies. Are they going to change up their curriculum to support us? Like, I know they like to read their novels, and ELA teachers don't like to change. Well, that's great, but don't read a novel if it's not on their skill basis.
Right. Yeah, and I actually see kind of a blending, when we talk about ELA, a blending of us supporting each other more rather than necessarily making the ELA teachers change anything. We are now way more literacy based, so there's more opportunities for us in social studies to support ELA. Also, one thing to think about is once we have implemented the standards over multiple years, students will have in 5th grade, they have US history. So they have the Civil War, they have creating the Constitution, they have all of those amendments that you were just mentioning, whereas that's like a 3-year process. So your 8th graders last year, that shift hadn't happened for them yet. So you can focus more in 7th grade on the world history part, because the Civil War is world history, not world history, it's totally US history, it's only US history. So that you spend maybe more time on that in 5th grade, so that when those conflicts come up, you can talk to them about that. So it's just about understanding the progression K-12 now and supporting our students in that. And as we implement the standards, those gaps will be filled by the different grade levels.
It will.
All right, so some of those shifts that you guys already mentioned, I'm just going to breeze over them, but that skill complexity. So you'll see standards that are similar. If you look at kinder and 1st grade and 2nd grade, you will see some of the same skills that you're seeing when in your 7th grade standards, just at a different complexity. Specifically argumentation, questioning, source analysis, all of those types of skills exist in all of our grade levels. And then also that embedded inquiry will also exist in all grade levels, critical thinking in all grade levels, just at different complexities. And that's why we have those anchor standards, which you see anchor standards in ELA and math. So we are kind of mimicking some of that also. All right. And then that literacy piece that you guys were mentioning, thinking like a historian, a geographer, economist, financial advisor, political scientist, all of that stuff you need to be able to read and write and speak and communicate. So we're trying to teach our students those skills. And then lastly, not lastly, we got 2 more things. And that blend of that skill and content. So you'll see here on this Venn diagram, the content connections between 6th and 7th grade. So 6th grade and 7th grade work together to get to 8th grade, where 8th grades, I actually would even say 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, all work together to build that global citizen and that civic engagement piece that they're doing in 8th grade. And so that's why there was that shift in the content. And having that global connection right now in 6th and 7th grade will support your students in 8th grade knowing how to be that engaged citizen. And then we also are looking at those higher level thinking skills that exist in the standards. So the skills and the content come together to build that student learning and that engagement. And then lastly, we're not teaching in isolation anymore. The core is we're not just teaching history. So if we take a concept like the French Revolution, you can connect your economic standards to the French Revolution. So what was going on in the economy at the time of the French Revolution that caused the people to maybe want to rebel against their government? So that's your economic standards. Then you have your history, which is just, what happened and why did it happen? And then you have your geography standards. So what happened in particular parts of France that allowed for this to be important or to occur? And then your civics. So the connection between the type of government that they had at the time and then whatever new type of government they were, and then the influences from other governments throughout the world. So all of that's the French Revolution. You're not changing your content, but you might change the focus of a particular day or a particular moment in your lesson to have students make those standards connections. All right, so we want you to, now that you've had some time to kind of think about that and we had this quick conversation, what are you excited about now in teaching these shifts and these standards? What are you nervous about or might need more information? So we're going to put up a collaborative board, and you're going to go ahead and on that collaborative board, share your thing that you're most excited about, and then something that maybe you're nervous or you want more information about.
Yep, higher level thinking. Assessment. We had the same discussion with the 6th grade.
Yeah, now that there is a broader connection to the storyline rather than the standards necessarily and content specifically, I know a lot of my teachers were nervous about knowing exactly what to teach. Like, am I teaching the exact right thing? And so that shift was hard because it's not about teaching the exact right thing. It's about teaching, utilizing the structures, utilizing the standards to teach the story. And
that focus on the skills and the things that they're gonna, you know, those looking at like the idea of you know, anchor standards and priority standards is something that will go beyond your grade content area. So when you're focused on just remembering content, that doesn't go into any other area. You know, think about all the skills, the analysis, the writing, the reading that will go to every single other content.
Yeah. And that's why it's good to look to your district leaders. And I know that we utilize a resource. So we try and support our teachers in knowing what to do. And if you don't have a resource, there's so many great things out there. You have so much freedom and can do a lot of great things. So.
Anybody else? Any other things you're excited or anything you're nervous about?
Yeah, I see more info about how to include inquiry, which that's definitely something that we're going to spend most of our time today talking about, because it's super essential to you being able to implement these standards. Also, you know, our legislature, I see one about our legislature right now. So we're just going to keep going and figure it out. You know, we can't worry too much about what our legislature says in the moment. It could change next week. It's so crazy.
Yeah, live teaching. Okay, why don't we go on to our next slide? Nicole, I think you're up. Oh, we still have a couple more. That's a good one. Scaffolding. Yep. Okay. Nicole?
All right, guys. So when I think about my social studies classes, when I went to high school, they were lecture and I was sitting in my seat just taking notes. There were people falling asleep. I never fell asleep. I was a perfect student. And sometimes we would be watching the movies on the reels for hours and hours and hours. Well, we're moving social studies to a different level. We want students to be engaged. We want them to be engaged in learning, and we want them to be engaged to learn the new standards. And one way to help them be engaged is through inquiry. I heard somebody say something about inquiry. So inquiry is the heart of social studies, and that's going to increase their engagement. We want them to be so excited about learning and making those connections from the past to the present that they want to come to class, and inquiry is a way to do it. Stephen, you always use
I always used, years before these new standards were even created. I was actually using inquiry every day with some kind of image that I would use to spark the attention of my students, that when they came in to just grab that attention, that they'd want to know more about what that image was about.
So inquiry is not just science, it's in social studies too. So they do that by exploring the standards, developing questions, gathering sources, and then making conclusions. There's so many benefits of using inquiry in your classroom. The one that stands out to me the most is it increases motivation. So students get excited about learning, and when their motivations increases, what else increases? Their academic achievement. They come to school every day. Their anxiety is lowered. So that's why we're encouraging you with these new standards to use inquiry. The brain is made for inquiry.
And so I use this idea of priming the brain for activity, of starting off with that image that they just want to know more about. They'd want to know about. And the great thing about history is it's a story. And when we start off with that image, we kind of give them a taste of what that story is about, and they just want to know more about it.
So that's why we're encouraging that our brain is ready for it. And aren't kids curious about things? Mm-hmm. Well, inquiry helps them do it because they're asking questions about it. If you go to the next slide, those are the elements of inquiry. It's not just an idea or a strategy. It's required to help our students have effective social studies experiences. And if we aren't using inquiry to teach social studies, then we're not meeting our standards. So there's the 6 elements of it: developing a question, supporting questions, gathering and evaluating sources. And my favorite part is taking an action. So when they put all these things together, they're able to take an action. So the big question is, I always have this big question is, how do the inquiry elements, and Stephen, if you want to go back and
you want to go back? Yep.
Yes. Okay, so you see all those elements. How do they connect to ELA? So think about it. How do they connect to ELA?
So let's go right to the collaborative board. Think about how those things all connect to ELA, and the more connections we can get students to make across content areas, the better.
Okay, I have to look. Okay. That sounds like my parents' house.
Yeah.
Okay, claim and counterclaim. Yes, pulling evidence from source. Yes, I always
like that.
Evidence. Give me evidence. Evidence.
Support claims.
Oh, yeah. Stephen, I think they're going to they're pushing you to DBQ.
Yeah, they are.
Evidence.
The argument, evidence, yes.
Yep.
But even not just DBQ, kids can be doing this stuff through like Socratic discussions.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Be doing it through philosophical chairs, or
yes.
even
like the bias. That's a good one.
Like there's so many strategies where kids could be doing this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like talking to each other. So that's
writing.
Really
that's a
helps
big
in
one.
Writing.
Yep.
It does help in the writing.
So you guys see from talking about that ELA and social studies, they align, they go together.
Oh, Laura, I'm going to give you an avid strategy you probably already know. I'm going to give you one today.
I was an avid teacher for many years at the high school that I taught at, and so I love avid.
Yeah,
a lot of my structures come from avid. It's just the best strategies ever.
All right, so I hope that we have convinced you the importance of inquiry. If you look at the next slide, there's some reasons why we want to use inquiry. I want you to choose your favorite one. Look over that. This is a summary, and choose which is your favorite one.
So read them all though first.
Read them all first, right?
Don't go to number 1 or number 2.
You could still pick number 1 or 2.
You can.
Oh, Inquiry Mind. I love it. I have that book too.
Okay, Holly, what's your favorite one on this?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I think though my favorite one is oh gosh. I would say it's a toss up between 3 and 4, I think.
3 and 4.
So that increased motivation and engagement. I always, when I was teaching government, I taught lots of different types. So I taught AP, I taught regular, and it was my regular kiddos that would have some of the best insights into things. And my AP kids sometimes would even never, they would just go with, the normal answers. And I just feel like inquiry supported my regular students, my EL students, my special ed students in making better connections to the course that I was teaching. Mm-hmm. And if I hadn't taught that way, then they would have never made those connections. So that's why I love that increased motivation one.
Which one's for you, Stephen? Thank you, Holly.
I think 5 is, I love the idea of teaching grit and perseverance and growth mindset. I mean, I thought that was as important, if not more important, teaching those things than history, and bringing those into historical events and looking at, how did this person in history show grit? How did they show perseverance? Things like that. I would add that in as well.
Well, I like any of these that talk about creating the perfect citizen, and the engagement, motivation, wanting to learn, having grit and perseverance. All these they take them to their next part of the next phase of life. So these are the reasons why we should incorporate inquiry.
So why don't you guys make a response? We gave you ours. Let's hear what you guys have to think. If you need to, you can click on the images up on the side. So just go through, select one of those, and put in a response. Let's see how many 5s there are. Holly, what were you again? What were you again, Holly?
I think she was 3 and 4.
She was 3 and 4. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, give everyone a little more time.
We also know that engagement's going to be need to be such a huge focus for us this year after this crazy year that we've had. Some of our kids have had the opportunities to just disengage completely, and got to get it back. And having them face to face with us and providing them these deeper opportunities to learn. And they're going to be at all different places. So it's going to be essential right now. To make sure that our students are engaged with what we're doing.
Okay, I'm going to share that out with everyone and see what everyone's ideas are. So what's our number 1 there?
This question is hard because you're asking us your number 1, but if you've read the book like I have, they all are linked together. A leads into B, which leads to C. So when you're sitting there saying number 1, and I'm thinking like a student, we tell our kids don't think that way, and you're asking us to think that way. So there should be another question that says, do you have multiple answers? Or should have had it as an open-ended question and not a multiple choice.
It's also really great though for our students to make judgments. And so even if there's no right answer, having them make a judgment with evidence is super important. So I would say that both of those strategies would be great in this situation.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's move on. So now my part here. So we're going to take a look at a couple different inquiry practices. So inquiry-based instruction is a student-centered approach where the instructor guides the students through question posing, methods design, data interpretation by the students. And through inquiry, students actively discover information to support their investigations. And this can be done using any of these practices that we're going to go over. Okay, and I went over a little bit on the notice of and wonder, and so we're going to go through and do this, and we're going to do this as if we're doing it with students. And what you start with is a picture, a chart, a map, or an infographic. And you start off with, what do you notice about it? And those notices are kind of what they see, what they can see there. And I give them about 2 minutes to write down notes, and we then review those. I would review them with partners first, and then review those as a whole group. And then after we go over that, then what do they wonder about, or what questions do they have? You know, thinking about questions, what maybe inferences do they want to make? And then we go over that, and then kind of then look at that picture again as a whole group. So this is the image that we're going to look at. It might be familiar to some of you. And here's our notice and wonder chart. And so right in here, the picture's up there, so you can click it on and look at it. How about I give you guys a minute to go through? How about a minute and a half? Give you a minute and a half to tell me what you noticed. Just tell me what you notice about the picture. Okay, and if you go in and open it up, on the bottom there's TT, which is the text box. So you can add a text box there. So those of you that aren't as good with the maybe drawing as I am, I'm not very good at it, but you can open a text box and should be able to type on there. So what do you notice there? Give you about another minute.
Sorry, I just stopped my screen. Hang on, I'll get it back.
Can someone put, Holly, can you put the template that I created for the notice and wonder? All you have to do is go in and put a new picture in.
Just did.
Awesome.
It's in the chat for anybody.
So I created just a blank template that you could use with your students. All you have to do is add a picture in there.
Steve, can you add this to our drive?
I don't know if I think I can put a link to it.
No, the
I don't know.
notice and wonder thing.
I don't know if I can. I'll look. I think I could probably just do it on a Google slide.
And then put it in our 6, 7, 8 drives.
Yep.
Awesome. Because I wanted, this was really good. I started using this last year for spell work.
Yep. Holly, you want to click a couple on and just read a couple to us?
Sure.
And maybe share, hit the share button, and then everyone can see it.
Yeah, let me get rid of our pictures and stuff. All right, so we're still in progress. Let's take a look at this one. So I notice a picture is of a king that is holding a sword and staff in control over the country. So that's one notice. Oh, can you see that, or can you not see that?
I can see it.
Okay. We have hierarchy, royalty, historical leader.
Mm-hmm.
Outline of his body is made up of his citizens.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good.
King consists of, represents many people. Church is the largest building. That's a good notice. especially for this time period. Ruler over kingdom seems powerful. But looks like a king, shows a picture of a countryside.
Yep. Okay, why don't we go, I'll just give you guys one more minute, put in your notices. I know some of you already did it, but go in and put in your notices. You have 1 minute to do that. Or I'm sorry, your wonders, put in your wonders. What questions do you have? By looking at this, what questions do you have about this? What do you wonder about? Paula, I'll send you the Nearpod of that template that you could just use as well.
Okay, that would be good. And do you want me to share it at site?
Sure.
Okay. It's my first year. I won't have any new teachers. I'm excited.
Yay. Okay, Holly, you want to share a couple more?
All right. So let's see.
Maybe some towards the bottom.
Paula's. What country and time area? Great. Who is he really? And really ruling? When is this occurring? Why? Good. Who is it? Is he violent? I like that question. And a sword connection to using the evidence. What time period? Was this commissioned by the ruler or not? That's a great question.
Yep. How about one more, and I'll tell you where this image comes from.
This is and what this means.
So this would be from the Enlightenment. This is the front piece of the book, The Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes. And you can see the Leviathan is towering over everything else. You know, you can see in the body, the different individual people, you know, all looking up to the head, you know, that idea of the sovereign, absolute monarchy that rules over his subjects with that divine right to rule. So this would be a great way to kind of start before you get into looking at some of those Enlightenment ideas and Enlightenment thinkers.
And one great thing about doing it the way we just did it now, with doing the notice first and having the share out, is that some of your kids who struggle with articulating what they notice in a picture might hear something from someone else and be like, oh yeah, I see that now. And then that might spark their curiosity to be able to do the wonder part of it.
Yeah,
so definitely something to think about. You could do both at the same time, but for those that struggle.
Yeah, I like the idea of breaking it up of, okay, notice is sort of on the lower DOK, but then the wonders are those questions based on and hearing what other people say is going to spark those kids.
Absolutely.
Yep. Now, another strategy, and Holly's or Nicole's gonna throw in the chat, the See, Think, Wonder. And I actually created this and you'll be surprised. Let me go on, and basically having kids look at what do you see, what details stand out, what do you think is going on, and what do you wonder about? What questions does this image raise for you? And there's a template that you can use, and it's very similar to the structure we just used. And we're not going to do this one, but here's sort of an example, and I can always send this one out as well. And within this structure, they have some great prompts that you could use. And when Linda sends out the presentation, this will be in there. You know, in prompting kids, so what's the least important thing that you see? Or what's the first thing you see? You know, and then think. I'm starting to think, or maybe, and you could use these kind of sentence stems as you start off using this strategy. I think it shows. And then here on the wonder, okay, one question I have is, I'm confused about, one thing it doesn't tell us is, so I actually created that one in the beginning, the one with Martin Luther King, and I created for a kindergarten teacher. And you can see what her students did with that. And she wrote all the see, think, and wonders up there and did it as a whole group. And, you know, maybe as you're starting off doing this is you do it all together. And that could be sort of your scaffolding to get students started using this strategy. So now let's kind of look at what other things could we do. Now, another great strategy is the question formulation technique. And another one is the zoom in, zoom out image analysis as well. And Holly or Nicole, I created I think I created both a QFT and a zoom in, zoom out and put them in the.
Yep, I got it.
Yep. So put those in there. You guys can use these. And, you know, once again, using those images. And these are two other strategies that you can use. And, you know, if you need any help with these, please reach out. I'd be more than willing to, you know, meet with you virtually and, you know, kind of go through how to use this.
I'm also going to add the Right Question Institute website.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Because they have videos and things like that you can utilize to learn how to do that strategy. And we could do a whole PD.
Oh yeah, maybe that'll be our next one that we're going to do.
But it's so good. It's so good.
Yep. And I've done it with gifted second graders. I've done it with seniors. I've done it with middle school kids. So it's really a great strategy. If I can help at all, please reach out to me. My email will be at the end. So think about, where could you see utilizing pictures to support inquiry in your classroom? So what do you think? Where could you see utilizing inquiry, these picture inquiry in your classroom? Yep. Yeah, looking at propaganda, there's definitely some good world history propaganda. Yep. Good way to start class. Yep, starting a unit, grab their attention. Great political cartoons, yep. Images.
Yeah, I love that you said art or paintings.
Yep.
That's a way to make great connections to our fine arts. And we can do that in social studies too.
I like during testing or supplement essays. I mean, really a See, Think, Wonder is a DBQ. You're asking them, what do you know?
Oh, we lost your audio again, Stephen.
You got me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Yeah, the Notice and Wonder is a DBQ. You're asking those questions and, you know, getting them to do that analysis we want students to do.
It could be used as a portion of your assessment also.
Yeah, definitely.
Because
cultural awareness.
One of your standards is about asking questions, asking compelling and supporting questions.
Yep.
That's in your standards. So, and it's not us doing it, it's your students doing it.
Okay, so let me go on. I like that compare and contrast.
You could give kids different questions.
Oh yeah, I like that they could find the images maybe to present. Okay, so now we're going to look at something that I call an artifact inquiry. And this is something I played around, sent a couple out to my 6th grade teachers, sent a couple to some 8th grade teachers and some high school teachers. So first thing you do is you got to start off with 4 to 7 visual artifacts. And those could be, you know, all the things that we talked about. They could be pictures, they could be actual artifacts, they could be political cartoons, and anything. And you want to think about like some kind of central theme. And then what I do is I break students into groups of 3 to 5, and I would assign them jobs. Okay, the leader, the timekeeper, the presenter, and the note taker. Then I would give each group a physical or electronic copy of a graphic organizer and the artifacts. And hopefully we'll all be in person, so it would be great to have those in person to be able to use. And that's probably the best way, so they can mark it up and, you know, really look closely at the image. And then I would give them this slide here, and I would go over the directions here. And basically, you know, you're going to be in your groups. We're going to divide up the jobs. You're going to have those 6 artifacts. You're going to have a note-taking template that the note taker is going to write on for the group. You're going to have about 12 minutes to work together. And you're going to review one artifact at a time. And you're going to think about what information does this source provide. And what you're going to do is you're going to form a hypothesis about how these items are related. And your hypothesis needs to be based on evidence from the images. And so the note taker is the one that will be completing the template, and then the rest of the group will then just be, you know, talking. And then at the end, the leader will present. So Holly is going to set up some breakout rooms in a minute. And what you're going to do, once again, the task is going to be, you're going to have 12 minutes. You're going to review each of the artifacts one at a time in the group. The note taker is going to write down your observations on the organizer. And then in the end, you're going to have a final discussion and form a hypothesis using evidence. So why don't we go to our next, and the final product will be, you know, that organizer with the hypothesis and evidence. And we're going to get as many groups as we can to share that. So everyone can open that and make a copy of that. So you have your own. So go into File and make a copy of that. Any questions before we start the breakout rooms? Remember, the note taker is the only one that needs to be writing down. Our leaders will be the one that presents. The timekeeper is going to kind of, or the leader is going to maybe organize things. The presenter will be presenting at the end. The timekeeper kind of keeping track of time. If you're getting close to time, letting people know. Any questions before we start the breakout rooms? Okay, Holly, I turn it over to you.
A couple groups that are all staying until the very last second. We're all back.
Okay, so do we have a group that would like to share their hypothesis? Where's one of the presenters? How about like in group 1 or group 2? Would you like to present? What's your hypothesis about how these items are related? Group 1, group 2. Please unmic and let me know what you put down. What's your hypothesis and what's your evidence?
I can start. I don't know what
Okay.
group number I am though. Our group hypothesis was that revolutions occur around the world and at different times and places, and usually with war and violence.
Okay. Do you have any evidence? What was your evidence for?
Our evidence, and we're just getting to that, is that there were plenty of pictures of weapons.
Okay, good.
Also pictures of fighting,
Okay.
physical contact.
Okay.
And also consternation in the newspaper article.
Okay.
And that everything was shut down during that period.
Awesome.
Thanks, Deborah.
Anybody else? Come on, let me get one more group share.
We're teachers. We have really good wait time.
Yep, come on. One more group.
One more.
I could share.
Great,
Good.
thanks, Nicole.
You're welcome. We had, I'm not sure our group number either, but we had, our hypothesis was the images show citizen uprisings for equal rights or representation.
Mm.
And that was based on evidence where we saw the first picture, looked like they were stepping over religious symbols.
Yep.
Lots of people behind them. They had flags. Looked like somebody was leading the way. And then the last group mentioned the general consternation in the article. The next picture had the horse America throwing his master. And so lots of different photographs that kind of repeated that theme.
Yep.
Great.
So let me go through, unless do we have one more group that wants to share? Okay, so let me go over the images. That first image was from the Red Guard, and this is the Cultural Revolution in China. And the Chinese says it's old ideas, old culture, and old customs and old habits. So that would be a revolution. The second one is from the French Revolution, and this is a scene from Paris, so what was going on. The third one was that, American horse. So the rider was George III, and this was the American Revolution. Again, the coins were from the French Revolution, making men are equal before the law. Okay, this is from the Haitian Revolution. You can see the fighting there. And this was the slave revolt. Okay, this was a cannon from the Wars of Independence in South America. Okay, this was Simon Bolivar. And so all of these you would put together as, having to do with the revolutions. And maybe think about doing this as a way of starting off your unit on revolutions and thinking of, hey, we're going to talk about some of these revolutions and come back to them. But the idea that students would be taking these images and using the evidence in the images to come to that hypothesis and conclusion. Now, really important thing, as we go over this, it's probably good to wait till the next day to give out the answer. Because if you do it in your first hour, those of us that have been with middle schoolers for, more than 20 years myself, know that the first kid is going to come in to your class from the next period and say, oh, it's revolutions, right, Mr. Williamson? So save the answer to the next day. Okay, so some things to consider. Did any of these items surprise you, and why? Feel free to unmic and let me know. Did any of the images surprise you? What about the stories that the items tell? Think about the stories that they tell. And maybe what makes, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the images, more so than the coin, and the coin takes a lot of thinking, which I don't even have. But the images are kind of right there that really tell some graphic stories, especially with the Haitian slave revolt.
Yes. Yep.
I think when we think about revolutions, like we kind of glorify them in our history books, like as this is a good, good thing. And we don't always look at both sides of it. We don't always look at the toll it took on
Yeah.
the countries that, engaged in those revolutions. So I think that's a great point, is the pictures stand out as, oh my gosh, this is like real. It happened to real people.
So what about the last one there? What make these items significant today?
I'll go again.
Good.
I kind of think that you can tie those in to present day, because some of the issues that caused them to revolt are still around, pretty much, and in some of the countries that the pictures were portrayed. So China, I think, is the glaring example where they overthrew one system and installed another system that's just as oppressive.
Yeah. Yep. Looking back at, some of those revolutions were good revolutions and some weren't so good for some people. So, really go ahead.
As I say, we utilized a compelling question for this exact topic. And the question that I've seen teachers use in 7th grade is, what makes a revolution successful?
Yeah.
And so you look at, the American Revolution and the French Revolution, which is the two they were really comparing at that time. And why did the Americans succeed and why did the French kind of succeed? So.
Then also, how about using it as a comparison? What makes one revolution better than another? Thinking about
questions, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but those compelling questions are super important for inquiry, and they are agnostic to the content necessarily. Yeah. You could utilize that same compelling question in a different grade level too.
Okay, some tips and tricks. So, finding artifacts, going in, museums, Google has so many great pictures. Googling artifacts from the American Revolution, artifacts from the French Revolution. So you could even make it, even more narrow than it is. Let's see, the one that I did for the 6th grade with early man, looking at a very specific person, and where this is much broader. But, going to those museum sites and, finding going, in Google Images, finding some of those tangible objects, having images and some tangible objects and some things that they have to read that, are accessible to 7th graders is important. But using that structure that I gave you, the template, providing kids with, here's the time we're going to give you, here's what I expect to see at the end of that, having those things for kids in place are really important. Let me know if you have any questions.
You might also want to model this with a different, maybe not as with 6 artifacts or whatnot, but you could model it first with them using like even just everyday items. I actually saw or participated in a professional development session where somebody just brought in stuff from the trash and we had to make these connections to it. So you could start with something like that, and then. But
I think the notice and wonder is kind of maybe a lead in to start this, and then the more you do this, and giving them, the organizer, and having maybe only starting with 4 images to start with, and being able to pull those connections together. So think about this, is where could you see utilizing artifacts to support inquiry in your classroom?
Think about your 7th grade content. What types of topics might this work well with, or if you know of something you'd already want to engage with?
There's probably some great images for imperialism imperialism has some great political cartoons and images and things like that that would be really good to kind of get started. Yeah, economics.
Yeah, I love that you can compare different currencies and what they look like. And
Yep. Having them practice developing those compelling questions. Ooh,
you could
global
definitely
depression.
utilize
I like that one.
and graphs in this artifact also. So I could see with
Ooh,
economics and charts of some sort.
I like the one, the scientific revolution, using some of those images. Yeah, definitely.
I could see that with industrial revolution too.
Yep.
Different types of inventions and things like
World
that.
War II, the home front, global immigration, migration. Yep. Class distinctions. Yeah, that would be a good one. There's a great one for the French Revolution.
I could see the Holocaust also being a good one for you to utilize here. I know that we're not, you don't spend, I don't know, my teachers do teach the Holocaust in 7th grade still, along with World War II.
Yeah.
And then they also teach it again in 8th grade. So they're getting it twice but in different contexts. So you still could teach the Holocaust here. Oh, I love that. Everyday life for citizens in different countries and eras.
Ooh, that would be a great one in comparing that.
I love comparing pictures of like in 3rd
Climate
grade,
change, yep.
like Phoenix, downtown Phoenix then and now.
I like that. Indigenous cultures, genocide. I actually put one together on the Armenian genocide that had some modern things. And did I think I shared that. Those of you coming to the 8th grade one, I'm going to share that with 8th grade. Okay, so am I turning it back to Holly?
Back to me. All right. So you have engaged today in a couple inquiry based strategies, but we also wanted to share with you that idea of a more all-encompassing inquiry. And there's lots of resources out there to support you with that. And we also talked already about how that curiosity is the core of the curriculum. So they actually did a study where they went to classrooms and they saw how many times kids asked questions. And in kindergarten to first, second, third grade, the amount of questions students just innately asked was overwhelming. But then by the time they get to middle school, you can barely get them to ask questions at all. And so that's because of the way we structure our education system. And so thinking about inquiry, how can we get our kids asking questions and engaging with higher level questions on a daily basis? And that's kind of the idea behind the shift that we make in social studies to this inquiry idea. So we're going to talk through the inquiry design model just real quick. And this comes from New York State C3 Teachers Initiative, and other states have jumped on board with this. And Grantley and Swan are the researchers that have kind of been working with this, and they've got great resources on their website. So somebody will put the C3
yeah, I got it
in the chat for you all. But we're just going to talk right now through kind of just the structure of that inquiry. So it starts with that compelling question. So if we could go to the next slide.
Wait.
Can I move it?
Nope, I got it. Sorry.
There we go. All right. So your compelling question is that big overarching question. So like the one we talked about earlier, what makes a revolution successful? That doesn't tell you what revolution you're covering. It doesn't tell you specifically, your time period or anything like that. It's that big question that kids are grappling with. And you can insert content depending on to fit your needs. So another compelling question that we utilize at our high school level in our district is progress more important than preservation? And that particular inquiry, the content focus is on Civil War monuments. Should we still have Civil War monuments anymore? And they do that, they teach that after they teach the Civil War. And it's meant to spark that curiosity and give that students something to be able to anchor their thinking to throughout their learning. So your next component then is your supporting questions and your formative tasks. So your supporting questions are your more specific questions. And those questions provide the frame for your inquiry. So we'll show you one in a minute, but the questions you'll notice are focused on what we want the students to learn about rather than that big overarching question. And then you also have the formative tasks and sources that are presented to students in this. And those tasks are scaffolded. So your first performance task is maybe a lower level task, and then they tend to get more difficult as you go through the inquiry. But the whole point is students need to be able to utilize the sources and the tasks and the questions to answer that big question at the end and make an argument for that. And that summative argument is super, super important in our standards and also just in the focus of inquiry in general. And then your last element of the inquiry design model is taking informed action. So the bulk of your inquiry happens before this, but I like to think of the taking informed action as we've learned all of this, we've made an argument. So now what? Why does this matter? What should we do about this? And so basically it's their connection to modern day. And so they first have to understand what happened, which could be done throughout the inquiry, or it could be done at another time period. They have to identify a problem, and then they have to do something about it. And that doing something could be lots of different things. So it could be organizing a boycott, it could be a fundraiser, it could be publishing something in the school newspaper. It's extremely relevant, and you're taking informed actions have authentic audiences. So they're meant to like actually be published or actually be presented or actually be done, something be done with it instead of just turning it in and getting a grade. So this is where you get that civic action piece, and you can do this with any time period, any issue you're talking about in your classroom, any question they're answering. So this is the essential piece though. Like if you don't have this taking informed action, the so what, or now what, then you miss out on the whole purpose of the reason why you spent time doing this inquiry. Now these inquiries, like I said, they are more encompassing and they take a little bit of time. So if I were going to do a full-blown inquiry like the one we're going to show you here, it would probably be about 2 weeks of teaching. You can break it up and use parts of it and do things like that, which we'll show you a little bit too. But we switched our final exams to inquiries in the high schools 2 years ago. And when I went into classrooms to support teachers in implementing this, the thinking I saw from students, I had never seen students engaging and thinking as deeply as they were when they were engaging with these inquiries.
Yep.
So
and I put that inquiry is in the chat, so you can access that one and save that.
Perfect. So the one that we put in the chat would be something that a teacher would engage with towards the end of the year, because it's about the Arab-Israeli conflict. And the main question is, why is conflict so difficult to resolve? What a great question, right? You realize this question almost throughout the whole year in 7th grade, especially because you're talking about conflict all the time. But this one's very specific around, why is there fighting in this region of the world all the time?
And bringing it to today with what just happened there and, the conflict that's been going on there.
Yep, absolutely. So it's super relevant to today. And you'll notice that there's there's 3 supporting questions for this inquiry. If I were teaching it, I'd say each supporting question would be about a day. You'd stage your question the first day.
Yep.
I staged the question with pictures. So just like we've talked about before, I put a picture of, and I didn't notice and wonder, of a missile being shot at, off the Gaza Strip, a modern day one. And then they have sources that they utilize to learn about the conflict and why it's happening. And then at the end, they make that argument. So why is conflict so difficult to resolve? But they're making the argument based off of this particular conflict. So their argument's going to be, why can't, the Arabs and Israelis get along? It's essentially the argument they're making. What has happened to do that. And then you have, again, the taking informed action at the end, where they are creating a presentation, publishing results of a survey.
Yep.
So again, they're actually saying, this is what we should do about this. This is what's going to make conflict easier to resolve. So they're taking the learning and they're doing the so what. All right, so like I said, this is a longer time period. We could do a whole training. We could take you through one of these series for another 2 hours another time. Actually, I don't even know if we could do it in 2 hours. But based off of what we just presented, where could you see utilizing some aspects of this inquiry design model or the whole inquiry design model in your classroom to support you in implementing inquiry?
Oh. What happened?
I don't know. We got shifted back for a minute.
Oh, wait.
Okay, one more.
Okay, here we are.
Here we go. So on the collaborative board, if you could kind of share some ideas because I know that when I hear about these things, like, oh, I could use this here and I could use this here. Everywhere, I know. That's what we want you to say. But I have to tell you that when we've actually kind of moved back from the full-blown inquiry. We went full-blown into it, but then COVID happened and we didn't have kids in classrooms and we didn't feel like we could engage in some of these activities. Yeah,
it's hard. It would be harder when you're not in person.
So we tried to do
one
a year on immigration, and my teachers were like, ooh, I don't know. We had some parent issues.
There are some on the French Revolution, the American Revolution. Let me find the one on the American Revolution real quick. Yep, here's the one for 7th grade for the American Revolution. Let me put this in the chat.
Love some of these ideas you guys have here.
Yep, there's one, and there's inquiry on the American Revolution. Was it avoidable? That's a really good question.
I don't know if I would do that one in 7th grade, only because of the more world focus. If we could find a way to connect the two together, I think it would be better. It's still a good inquiry.
Yeah.
Why was the church opposed to technology, scientific revolution? Yeah.
Yes.
That's a great idea.
Okay, so anybody else?
And we hope that you see that, like, doing the full-blown inquiry is valuable.
A lot. It's a lot. Yeah, it's valuable. It definitely is.
It's definitely time-consuming. So you just have to think about where you would include it. And I know lots of states have gone to full-blown inquiries for their whole curriculum.
Yep.
Like, they do like
well, New York does like some kind of DBQ at the end that is in their Regents exam.
So it's just about what you feel comfortable using and trying. But I would definitely consider trying to do one of these a year if you were. All right, we're going to turn it over to Nicole. Show you how we took one of these pieces of the inquiry and turned it into a quick write, a DBQ quick write. And we only have 10 minutes, so we're going to, sorry, we keep doing this to you, Nicole.
Okay, it's okay. I'm going to talk about, then I'll let Stephen tell how he used it in his class, but a DBQ is a quick way first. It gives students the opportunity to think, collaborate, analyze, dialogue, listen, and synthesize.
Yep.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Yep, just using, looking at those inquiries, just taking one document out of there and using that compelling question, and having students just look at that one. If I don't have time to do all that, I can find one good document that I really want them to dive into. And DBQ is that document-based questions.
Mhm. So I want you to think about, this is oh, he's going there. Okay, so it's a brief written response to the question or the probe. It could be used at the beginning or the end, and it just increases their learning because students are paying close attention to all of the details. So I want you to think about the quote, right?
Well, real quick, before you go on to the quote, the quick write is a great one-day strategy. You take one document, you then write about it. Good.
I'm taking notes while he's talking. Right. So writing is thinking. To write well is to think clearly. That's why it's so hard. And I'm just thinking about our ELA teachers, how we're trying to get social studies and ELA to work together. And this is a great way that they can use. This is a great strategy that they can use because they're writing. And then you heard Holly and Stephen talk about this question, why is conflict so difficult to resolve? And you heard Stephen say that this is you can do this in one day instead of maybe save the full-blown inquiry for once a quarter, but these can be done daily because then it goes with ELA. You can find a lot of articles in News ELA. I don't know if you guys have it, but you can find a lot of articles in there. And there are the steps that you would use to do it. So I'm just going to have Stephen describe to you how he did it.
Yeah, so first of all, this article was a free one and they have a lot of good free stuff on there. But you would start off and you would have them work in partners and have them first start by sourcing the document. And maybe to begin with, you probably need to go through and show them and work with them and show them how to source the document. And ACAPS is actually something that's used in AVID. And then after you kind of review the sourcing, you would have them go through and as partners, write a paragraph answering the question and then kind of share it out. And then, so this is the article. You could actually click that on, but we'll send this out so you don't have to do it now. And then here's ACAPS. So looking at the author, the context, the audience, the purpose, and significance.
And I already put the ACAPS template
Cool.
in the chat for you all.
And that's an AVID structure. I used it with my 6th graders a lot. And it's there. And then here's what you would do is you would take what they learned in that document, and in that News ELA article, they would then give you 2 pieces of evidence to explain why conflict is so difficult to solve. And you could use this structure pretty much for, just maybe change the topic sentence based on the inquiry you're using, but you could use this for anything. And this would be just a quick write using one DBQ.
So when I'm thinking about a lesson in social studies, I'm thinking that I would like to start, the word anticipatory set. I would like to start with one of those strategies at the beginning and maybe use this for my my formative or summative, because you do it at the end of the day. That's what I'm thinking about.
Yep.
So you guys, when you're planning for this, you can use the C3 website that we put in the chat. That's great. I use that to make one of my lessons. And I just want to reinforce the idea that you model all of these strategies. You do a think aloud for them. You might have to model it, then do it as a partner and do it as a whole group. Give them time and show them how to do it, and use something that they really, really know about, so that they'll catch on to how to complete these strategies. Do you guys have any more tips and tricks, Holly and Stephen? Do you have any more for DBQs?
So Library of Congress, they have some great things that you could start off with. It could be an image-based, think about that artifact analysis. You could actually break that down and give them what the artifact's about, actually give them that background knowledge and have them do that DBQ about revolutions and the impact of revolutions, on any of those images.
You can also utilize art,
Mhm.
or it doesn't have to be a reading. It could be a whole bunch of different things, and also it could be a part of a reading. So it could be a particular piece of a document or a particular piece of an image that you want them to engage with first, and then you can reveal more as you go along. So like that zoom in, zoom out idea, only with this argument piece. Political cartoons.
Political cartoons.
I think political
Oh, yeah.
cartoons are, the way that you interpret them
Oh,
can
yeah.
be very different, and so that would allow for a lot of different arguments or a lot of different answers, which is good because you want your students to hear multiple perspectives. So definitely, that's a great idea too.
So you guys, do we have time for the collaborative board for them to bring everything together? Do we have time to do that? Okay, so you remember the standards at the beginning, and we talked about inquiry and the importance of it, and why it's so important. And then we gave you strategies. I think these are some great strategies: image inquiries, artifact inquiries, C3 inquiry, the big template that Holly talked about, and we talked about DBQ quick write. Now, what connections can you make between those strategies and the standards?
So I think, are we going to do that one, or are we going to go to the collaborative board?
It doesn't matter.
We
Just
can
think
do
about
that.
and then we want you to kind of also think broadly about your whole experience for the last 2 hours. I know that's a lot, but based off of everything that you've learned, any strategies we've shared, what's one thing you can commit to doing next year to support you and your students in effectively implementing these new standards?
Yeah, Stephen, can you put back up the last slide so they can see the strategies, all those things that they learned about, the standards, and yeah, that one.
Think about those things we did, and then also the standards that we talked about.
Yep. So think
don't
about
forget
what's one thing you can commit to that you learned today that you want to use next year with your students. Yeah, quick writes. I love the quick writes. Image inquiry, artifact inquiry, yes.
bell work. I like the idea of getting the students started with it, using the bell work.
I did every day.
Mm-hmm.
Pique that interest, yes.
That's motivating, right?
Yeah. Notice and wonder. Yep.
Notice and wonder.
Yep.
So one thing that I feel like I personally overlooked originally when I looked at the standards was the idea that we get kids asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I love the notice wonder piece, because you can get students to ask questions, and that exists in our standards. And I personally forget about that sometimes because I'm worried about what I have to teach and what I have to present. But at the same time, shifting my mindset to, well, it's not just about me. It's about what are the kids curious about? What do they wonder about these things?
Grow their brains. Grow their brains.
Yep. Well, these are good. Productive struggle. I love that.
I'm so glad a lot of you guys are latching onto that artifact inquiry.
Okay. Let me go on to.
You're going to say something. Aren't you going to share something, Stephen?
Yep. So here, everyone can go into the feedback form. Okay. And fill that out. So I think if you open it up, I'll give everyone just a second to open that up.
I also put it in the chat so that even if we...
Why don't you put that in the chat and then I can move on to the next.
If you guys wouldn't mind filling that out for us.
Give us some feedback.
You saw with 6th grade. So we took some of the suggestions and ideas from 6th grade and kind of changed what we did with 7th. And so we want to continue to be better ourselves. So we appreciate the feedback. And then also some ideas that you guys have for what you might need. because
Mhm.
I know Linda's always looking for new professional development topics and ideas
Oh,
to
yeah.
share with you all. And we take those ideas and give that feedback to the rest of our leadership team, and we can
Yeah.
create some of those great trainings for you all too. So.
Okay, and then this is available, so everyone make sure you open this and save this. Here's some great resources and places that you can find. A great one is the inquiry kits from the ThinkPort Education. The World Digital Library is another great one. There's that C3 State Hub. There's some good ones there. Citizen U has a great image analysis choice board with different kind of image-based things that you could use for bell work. I also put an image inquiry strategies in there that I developed for teachers in Scottsdale. And down below are emails. Feel free to reach out. I have 2 teachers on, anything I can do to support you or, help out, please feel free to send me an email.
That goes for all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for such a wonderful training. We really appreciate it, and lots of great ideas and resources, as well as just taking what you showed us and then applying it to so many different lessons too. For attendance purposes, if you can please type your name into the chat. And also, if you do not get our monthly newsletter, I do a monthly newsletter from August until May. You can type your email as well in there if you don't already get it or haven't done it in a previous training. And I will add you to our distribution list for our monthly newsletter. And that has all sorts of tips and tricks, as well as, the different kinds of lessons that we have and trainings that we have coming up. So if you're interested in the newsletter, just include that as well. And I think that is it. So thank you all so much for coming. Just make sure to put your name first and last in the chat. I'm going to